40 for the rapper, busy man shit, nigga. They take their head off, nigga.
Right where Eve did to Adam, I just pray my love don't lie to me. Swing that iron like stamps and I can't let no hoe to lie to me. I don't feel these rappers, all they lies is hypocrisy. Ain't no competition, ain't no rivalry. Niggas think I'm playing, I don't hear one word they saying, this shit light work. Think Muhammad one of us, he might lose his life first. Circle up and stay alert, another cop just stretch the nigga. He a demon, it's an exorcism, watch I bless the nigga. You took that oath in blood, then you know I'm gon' get active with ya. Fuck the opposition, I see vision, let me paint the picture. Rappers claim they spin, I ain't listening, is in fact the If revenge was a woman, now I scope that bitch like Jack the Ripper. War, we gon' run the summer, it's gon' be historical. Thought they making plays, made them niggas call the audible. Ask who run this shit, but that question is rhetorical. Bitch, I'm the one, me cookies with the oil. I'ma get them crackers, hell should've never kidnapped my family. I can't just do that, bet I be the last nigga standing. Do a life sentence for my niggas, pray you understand me. I might put a switch on this Glock and call it young baby. How you real triggering on them dots? You a bird feeder, claiming he a demon. What's a demon to a cold leader? What he saying something, I ain't hear him, this shit light work. It ain't about who got the gun, it's about who gon' up that fight first. I turn a bad situation to a game changer. Bring soldiers from the dead, just raised up the chain. Free shots, I'ma look like Aaron Jones when I run it. Never bite the hand and feed you, you won't never get that hand back. He bitchin' about 10%, I don't wanna hear none of that. He dropping sword, fuck him, just make sure you get that cover back. Look around, he ain't with us, probably cause he never was. Now my chin like you with the angels for your brothers. Everybody wanna be Richard Porter, God kill him like Alpo. Play if he want, it's laying in the trunk like Lee Malvo. I'm a certified woman's ass nigga, I am not a toy. Hey, out with that hollow sign, yeah, this the rim accord. Feel like Gullah Jack when I'm in Fayetteville, you feel your boy. Still about my brain, still I think that's all that I do. The way I get that boy lost, they gon' start to call him Elroy. Fuck his game, pop out on them demons like I'm Hellboy.
According to God, the white man is the devil.
See, I've been in here for a little minute. You know what I'm saying? And I see niggas, they like to talk a lot. They like to claim leadership. They like to claim this and that. You know what I'm saying? They like to be above what they really is and have authority. But they don't really need that authority. They don't really know what to do with that leadership. You understand? You hold hands with this white ass, need to stop and ask you to give a damn what you talk about. Don't give a fuck what you believe, nigga. Gotta stand up to serve my God. We don't pray on our knees, nigga. Yeah. See, everybody ain't with all that peace talk. Everybody ain't with all that. Let bygone be. Boy, ass need to stop and ask you to prop. It's about to get serious. Go ahead. When they hit us with dope and kill us with crack, where the fuck with your leaders? I'm curious. Cashed out on your blood, traded you in and bought a new biz. Ask you the prophets, I tell you the scheme. If you don't wake up, you gon' die in your dreams. I say you won't tell you no more. I swear these crackers try to kill us slow. Just spoke to a nigga in Fed, up for parole because of the COVID. It feel like the host in this world that don't go together. Know that it's gold in the ghetto. I'm in the city blazing with my niggas. Just told the devil the score never settled. Yeah, see the prophets. I'm tired of these niggas keep talking about, you know, you respect my religion, I respect your religion. Boy, your ass need to stop and ask you the prophets. You know, like we all come together. Cause you know what they say God so loved the world. God so loved the world and know boy, your ass need to stop and ask you the prophets. Don't give a damn what you talk about. Don't give a fuck what you believe, nigga. Gotta stand up to serve my God. We don't pray on our knees, nigga. Yeah. Hey, gentlemen, y'all, we don't pray on our knees, nigga. Gotta stand up. You know what I'm saying? Boy, your ass need to stop and ask you to one step, I'm solid for show. To the fake niggas, stay silent, I got it, let's go, let's go. I ain't taking no losses, I ain't no token when we got the flow. I ain't no peace, just pay with your own. I'ma be loyal to the right arm, tell him we can't keep it slate. And I can never let bygone be bygone. Got your baby mother on high, got your baby pass through the fire. Ask you the prophets, that baby so belong to the Lord. How dare you abort it? Therefore a failure, bitch, I can afford it. I prepare slaughter, you bring me my water. Push your lead weak, let them lies slip through their teeth. Their ass need to stop it, and see the prophets.
That's just the reality, Christians. I'm sorry to hurt your feelings. I know your pastor lied to you every Sunday for 30 years, but that's what the church is for, lying. That's why they exist, to lie the money out of your pockets.
Boy, your ass need to stop it, and see the prophets. Give a damn what you talk about. Don't give a fuck what you believe, nigga. Gotta stand up to serve my God. We don't pray on our knees, nigga. We don't pray on our knees, nigga. Gotta stand up to serve my God. We don't pray on our knees, nigga.
Hey, I'm just following orders.
Shalom, Israel. This is Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge. Start out of 1 West, 125th Street, Harlem, New York, under Commander General Yohana. This is our Friday night Lashawan Qadash class for Colleen. First, we give us a courtesy salute to our brothers. Shalom, Yahweh, Bashim, Yahweh, Shabbrakathum, to all the brothers. Shalom, Yahweh, Shemar, Latham, Bashim, Yahweh, Shad, all the sisters. Like in 1 second, pull this chat up. We got any questions or comments, go ahead. If you're watching online, leave it in the chat and I'll try to address it before the end of the class. Any questions in the room, just go ahead, raise your hand and I'll try to address it. You know what I'm saying? Again, tonight is the Friday night Lashawan Qadash class where we break down the Hebrew text in the Paleo, in the Assyrian Hebrew, the Hebrew language, how it's spoken, what words mean, and how to read the Hebrew in its original text. Break down the context of certain words. You know what I'm saying? So this class is very important because, you know what I'm saying, a lot of us, you know what I'm saying, of course, brothers in the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge, we biblical scholars, historians, you know what I'm saying, we know the scriptures, you know what I'm saying, in and out because we've been taught by our leader, Commander General Yohana, who passed down the knowledge that he's learned from his elders, you know what I'm saying. So we're very well versed in the scriptures, you know what I'm saying, and the breakdowns, but it's important to also understand the Hebrew and the text that the scriptures were originally written in because, you know what I'm saying, so we don't, you know what I'm saying, we don't end up getting cut by, you know what I'm saying, some fake Israelite group who took what, you know what I'm saying, Commander General Yohana gave them and ran off with it, you know what I'm saying, started doing their own thing, you know what I'm saying. So it's important to make sure you're taking notes, asking questions when they come up as we go over the Hebrew. Make sure you have your resources, your tools, you have your biblical Hebrew workbook, textbook. You have your Bible, your Strong's Concordance of the Bible, the Hebrew Dictionary. You have your Bible Hub app, you know what I'm saying, all these different tools, your Greek Interlinear Hebrew, your Greek Interlinear Hebrew app, you know what I'm saying? You have a sword with you, or e-sword, Apocrypha, all these different texts, or all these different tools, what you're gonna need, especially, you know what I'm saying, and last but not least, a pen or pencil, you know what I'm saying, so you could take notes. So we're gonna get right into it. Last week we talked about plurals. We finished, you know what I'm saying, talking about plurals and irregular plurals. So as we learned the past couple weeks, we have, you know what I'm saying, the usual way to pluralize a word, it would be to add young, right? So the usual way to pluralize a word would be young. So for the most part, when you see a word that's pluralized, it's going to have the prefix young, which looks like this, right? So this is what it's going to look like. Brothers and sisters in the chat, let me know if y'all can see that. You know what I'm saying? We're not in the school today. Salakia to the brothers and sisters, but, you know, we still going to get it in, all right? So, you know what I'm saying? Usually this is what it look like, or in the ancient, we have That's what it look like. You know what I'm saying? At the end, if you're regularly pluralizing a word. But we also learned that there are irregular plurals. So sometimes it won't have that yum at the end, but you'll still know it's plural, right? So we had tha, the character tha, like when you add a tha at the end of a character, or slaki, when you add a tha at the end of a word, like we used this example last week, ba, right? This means father, but when you add a tha, it's pluralization, but it's a particular pluralization. It's categorization. So you're talking about categories, right? So categories of father. So father, which would be Abba, becomes Abath, which means, fathers, like grandfathers, grandfathers, great grandfathers, forefathers, you know what I'm saying? Talking about a category of fathers. So we learned that last week. We learned stem changes. You know what I'm saying? Some words have a complete stem change, or they don't change at all. Like mayum and shamayum shamayum is heaven or heavens. You know what I'm saying? It's plural and singular, and it doesn't have a suffix to pluralize it. We learned that last week. We also learned that the stem changes, right? So we got Shah or Ayash, meaning man, Ayash. And to pluralize that, we would say Anashim. So it changes, the root changes from Ayash to Anash, and then you add a yum at the end. So we learned that. And then we also learned Salakia. Oh yeah, waf, right? So some words have the suffix waf behind it. Like we use the word karab or napash, right? And both of those words, to pluralize those, we add waf at the end. And we took a note, right? Or we should have taken a note last week that sometimes when you see, because we use waf to indicate what we would understand as feminine, right? So like we got the word ak, which we know means brother, right? So ak means brother in the Hebrew, but when you add waf at the end, salaki. You add waf at the end, then it becomes how you would say sister, right? So we're gonna touch on that a little bit today. So we talked about how waf at the end of a word like charab, which means sword. Charab waf is swords, plural, but it can also be used to talk about subjugation, which we're gonna get into today. So we used the example last week, right? Salakia, if I'm going a little fast, just wanted to touch on what we've been going over for the past couple weeks so that we can, continue and compound on what we learned. So, if you missed the past couple, the last two classes from the last couple weeks, I advise you to go back and rewatch those and refresh your memory, or get up to speed if you missed them entirely. But we're gonna get into subjugation, right? And how to identify so we can understand the suffix waf, which would again look like this, right? So there's two ways to do this, right? To show that something is serving another. That's what subjugation is talking about. So So there's two ways to show this, right? So you have waf, which we're going to talk about now, and then later we're going to talk about another one where you would just add a ha at the end, right? So we see that a lot with brothers and sisters' names in daily use. Without even, realize a lot of us, we might not even know what we're doing while we're saying these things. Like we say akwaf, we call the brothers ak. Ak is brother in Hebrew versus akwaf, which is sister in Hebrew. Well, that's because in the scriptures, we know in 1 Corinthians, we know that the man is the head of the woman, and the head of Christ, the head of the man is Christ, and the head of Christ is the Most High. So because of that hierarchy, we know that when you see waf behind ak, it means it's talking about sisters, because the man is the head of the woman. So the man is the head of the sisters. So it shows that hierarchy. We put that waf behind it. That's why you put waf behind ak, to make it ak waf, to make it sisters. Again, if you got any questions or if you don't quite understand what I'm saying, if you need me to repeat anything, just put it in the chat, raise your hand, you know what I'm saying? And you know what I'm saying, we're gonna bust it down. So again, we talked about last week, just a little bit more review, right? And make sure, you know what I'm saying, let's make sure we take in efficient notes as you see me write down things or bring a new concept that, you know what I'm saying, as we go into a new concept, I will write it down, you know what I'm saying, highlight, you know what I'm saying, make your notes as clear and concise as possible so that you can reference them later so that we're not wasting our time here, right? So last week we talked about the word malak. So we got ma, la, ka, right? All right, so that word malak means king, right? Now, if you add waf to the end, we're gonna go ahead and change this to the original ka, since this ka is no longer at the end of the word, you know what I'm saying, as we learned in past classes. And then we're gonna add a waf at the end, right? We got malak waf, meaning, so now malak goes from malak waf, meaning now this means king dome. Now, easy way to understand this is what we're focusing on right now, right? We should already have this root word in our notes, right? Easy way to remember this is a king or a kingdom, malak waf, serves the king, right? So that waf is showing rank or hierarchy or subjugation, right? So I'm gonna give another example. Give me 1 second. All right, so this is just to give another example, right? The kingdom serves the king, right? So it's just talking about hierarchy. Now it's easy for us to, you know what I'm saying, in some cases, a word can be feminine, right? In some cases, you would know, you know what I'm saying, you would know whether a word is feminine or masculine based on the context, based on what a scripture is talking about, the words around the scripture, the context of the scripture itself, right? So that's how you would know whether something is feminine or masculine. But the suffix itself doesn't necessarily determine femininity. Not necessarily. It's so we're, you know what I'm saying, in your oppressor's language, they like to think of it as, you know what I'm saying, if you know what I'm saying, if a man outranks another man, then a lower ranking man has to play a feminine role. Well, that's not, you know what I'm saying, that's not our culture, you know what I'm saying? Again, we're not homosexuals, you know what I'm saying? So this is talking about hierarchy, rank, you know what I'm saying? So when you see wath, it means that whatever has that wath behind it is serving something. So the wath is the malak wath, the kingdom serves the king, right? And you know what I'm saying? When we think of something serving something, you know what I'm saying? I don't want us to get too, you know what I'm saying, in our heads or in our feelings about, you know what I'm saying, you know what I'm saying, servitude, because everything serves, you know what I'm saying, everything serves the most high at the end of the day. Like if we take the word malakwa, the kingdom serves the king. But why does the kingdom serve the king? Because the king has the knowledge, just like we're gonna get into it later, but you know what I'm saying, the great King David, King Solomon, you know what I'm saying, all the mighty kings that the Most High put in place to rule over Israel, they had the knowledge and the wisdom given to them by the Most High to lead these people, right? So the kingdom, Malak Wath, serves the king, the Malak, or Hamalak in the Hebrew, so that the king can serve the people. You know what I'm saying? So everybody's serving, right? Like how many, you know what I'm saying, who didn't Christ serve? Right? You know what I'm saying? He served everybody, even though he was the authority in that time over Black, Hispanics, and Native Americans, you know what I'm saying, to teach them the truth and to lead them. You know what I'm saying? He served everybody. He raised the dead, you know what I'm saying? Even though he had his disciples, you know what I'm saying, who followed him and learned from him and all of that. You know, he served. You know what I'm saying? He served everybody. They served him so that he can serve the people, raise the dead, make the blind see, uh, heal the sick, and you know what I'm saying, make the lame walk and all of those things. So he was serving. So, you know what I'm saying? Just to you know what I'm saying, break that down, just so we don't get too, you know what I'm saying, brothers, to be honest, you know what I'm saying, sometimes when you when we hear, you know what I'm saying, you serve, like that we have to serve, you know what I'm saying, brothers, that can kind of rub brothers and sisters the wrong way. That, you know what I'm saying. So, you know what I'm saying, let's not be carnal, you know what I'm saying. So the other way to indicate uh that something is serving another is the ha, right? Which looks like this. So, for example, we gonna give a couple words, right? So we got shar, which means if you go into your Hebrew dictionary, it means, you know what I'm saying, it means prince. So Yashar Allah, prince of the power, right? So the root word shar means prince, right? Now, when you add a ha at the end, shar becomes shara. Shar becomes shara, right? Which makes this princess, which makes shar become shara, which makes prince become princess, right? Now, again, as the scriptures say in First Corinthians, the man is the head of the woman. So this, while shara is a feminine word, when you're referring to a princess, that ha just means that the shara is, the princess is serving, right? So, and it's a couple different, you know what I'm saying? It's a couple different examples. You can use this word to, you know what I'm saying, you can use this character rather, Salaki. Use this character to make a word feminine, more feminine. Like for example, like say you wanted to name your daughter, like so last week we talked about this word right here, Shemayim. You know what I'm saying? I forgot where we was at. Oh, we was talking about plurals, right? And we talked about the word Shemayim. Sh, right? Shemayim meaning heaven or heavens, right? Because it's a plural that doesn't change. Shemayim is heaven or heavens, right? Now, if you wanted to name your child Heaven or your daughter rather, you know, Shemayim, it sounds too masculine. Shemayim, you know what I'm saying? So to make it feminine, you would take this suffix. You'll take this suffix and turn it into a ha instead of a ma at the end. The ma is masculine. The ha would be softer, more feminine for a young princess to call your daughter or young princess Shemaya. So it'll turn Shemayim into Shemaya, making it feminine so that it could be, you know what I'm saying, used for a sister's name, right? Another example, right? It probably looks like I'm going pretty fast through this. Just if you know what I'm saying, pause and rewind as you must. You know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying. That's the benefit of being able to watch online. You just pause, rewind as you need to. You know what I'm saying. No problem. Just make sure you get your proper notes. And you know what I'm saying. Once we get back into school, we can get back in with questions. You know what I'm saying. Based on the topic, or you know what I'm saying. If we don't understand certain things, you know what I'm saying, throw it in the chat. And you know what I'm saying, if I need to, I'll backtrack. You know what I'm saying? Well, that's not a problem. Just as long as, you know what I'm saying, we're getting the information and we're able to at least have it in our notes so that we can look at it. And if we don't understand something, then we can revisit it. Right? So another example. So we got this word right here. We got da. We got a da, a sha, and a na. Right? So the transliteration, or how you will pronounce this, will be da shan, deshan, which means to be acceptable, right? If you go into your Hebrew dictionary and look up this word dashan, it means to be acceptable, to be accepted, or as referring to a sacrifice or an offering, right? To be accepted or to be acceptable, to be one of the words that recur in the definitions, because there'll be several definitions, but pretty much mean the same thing. It'll say fat or to fatten, to make fat, right? To satisfy. You know what I'm saying? Because, and you know what I'm saying, that could, you know what I'm saying, that could leave a bad taste in brothers and sisters' mouth, like fat, you know what I'm saying? Like, we got to understand that word fat means something totally different back then than, you know what I'm saying, the connotation or the understanding, the understood definition that it has today, right? So if something is fat or made fat, it's made wealthy, it's made great, it's made exceeding, right? So that word fat, like for example, in Slovakia, in Genesis, you know, when you had Joseph, he was the second highest ranking. He was the second highest ranking man under Pharaoh in Egypt, right? Because his brothers had sold him into captivity. Just to give a little backstory, right? So he was in command of Egypt under Pharaoh, giving wisdom and, you know what I'm saying, interpreting dreams, you know what I'm saying, giving orders to make sure that the land didn't, you know what I'm saying, suffer and perish during a famine, right? And his brothers and his family, or his brothers who had sold him into captivity, not knowing that this was his brother, or this not knowing that this was their brother who they had sold into captivity, they had went to, you know what I'm saying, Pharaoh or Salakia. They went into Egypt at the time because, you know what I'm saying, they were preparing for the famine. They were like, look, we need you know what I'm saying, food, right? And long story short, he had he had told him to come into Egypt, into a land called Gershon, right? And that was, as a matter of fact, if we go to Salakia, Genesis chapter 45, and I believe verse 18, let me get there real quick. Genesis chapter 45, verse 18. Okay, so I'm gonna start at 17. Genesis chapter 45, verse 17. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, say unto thy brethren, this do ye, lay your beasts, and go get unto the land of Canaan, and take your father and your household, and come unto me, and I will give you the good of the land of Egypt, and ye shall eat the fat of the land. Right? So that word is talking about that word, the fat of the land, is talking about the good of the land, right? The best parts of the land, right? The fact that, you know what I'm saying, the earth is self-sustaining if it's taken care of properly, right? It's talking about the good parts of the world, the best parts, right? So this is where this word comes from, Dashan, to be made fat, to be made acceptable, as referring to an offering or a sacrifice, right? Now, Dashan is general context, Salakia. It's general context. But if you wanted to make it feminine, you know what I'm saying, what would you do? Let me give y'all a second in the chat. I see a couple brothers and sisters jumped up in there. Give y'all a hot second, right? So how would you make this word Dashan, how would you make it feminine, right? Referring to a woman, right? All right. I don't see no hands. I don't see no answers in the chat. So I'm gonna go ahead and give it to you, right? So we're gonna do what we've been doing this entire time. We're gonna add a ha to the end. So once you add that ha to the end of a word, now and just keep in mind, right? So this is the root word, or this is what we're building the word off of. So we got Dashan. Now, typically, when you're pronouncing a word, you'll pronounce the first, like, okay, let me see. You'll have, I'm gonna write this up here. Now, in the Paleo Hebrew, it'll be written like this, and it'll have these connectors. We'll have da, sha, and it'll have this connector right here indicating that this character is pronounced on its own, da, right? And then you have a sha and a na, but you'll have this connector in between it, which will mean that you would drop the pronunciation at the end. Like, for example, this is how you would write this. Just a review, right? So we have a da, which will be here in the Assyrian in the ancient Paleo. Then we have sha, right, which is here and here, and then we have a na, which is here and here. But when you pronounce these two characters together, sha and na, it becomes shun. You would drop this phonetic, what sounds like a vowel phonetically, right? Even like we know that there are no vowels in the Hebrew alphabet, right? But phonetically, we'll hear of ah because we've been indoctrinated by our oppressor's language, which uses vowels as the nucleus of a syllable, right? In a word. But, you know what I'm saying? You'll see da, sha, and you'll pronounce the sha and the na together, making shun. But when you add that ha at the end, you have to pronounce that last syllable and then just add your ha. So that's how you would pronounce it as a woman's name or making it feminine. Dashana, right? So hopefully, you know what I'm saying, we understand that. If you need me to go deeper or, you know what I'm saying, explain that further, just put your question in the chat, or, you know what I'm saying, when we get back to the school, just, you know what I'm saying, you can ask in person or put in the chat, raise a hand, you know, and I'll break it down further if necessary, right? Now we're going to get into this word here. We got this word here. So this whole time we've been talking about why we perceive these suffixes as feminine, because a lot of times, because the man is the head of the woman, anytime you see a word that is feminine contextually in the scriptures, it'll have one of those prefixes or it's one of those suffixes behind it. Because if it's talking about a man and a woman, or if it's talking about a woman in a certain context, since the man is the head of the woman and the woman serves the man, then it'll have those suffixes behind it. So any feminine word that you see will 9 times out of 10 have that suffix. But understand, again, that doesn't mean that's what this means. It doesn't mean this is feminine. It just means it's talking about subjugation. So you can see these suffixes at the end of masculine words like charab, sword. Like, what's more masculine than a sword, right? But you'll see wath at the end. Or you'll see malak, king. What's more masculine than a king? But you'll see wath at the end talking about kingdom. It's talking about something serving something. So just to, you know what I'm saying, bring it full circle, this is talking about something serving, Salaki. This is talking about something serving. It's not necessarily feminine, but because the woman served the men, then you'll see this suffix behind a feminine word. So hopefully that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? Hopefully that's clear to brothers and sisters. And I'm going to show you this example too. So we got this, right? Sha, la, ma. So, in 1 second, slide. So we got Sha, la, I'm gonna put this up here. Sha, la, ma, and a ha at the end, right? So Sha, la, ma, ha. Now, based off of what we just learned, we know that this right here means that something is serving something, right? Based off of what we just learned. So since this is an addition, Salaki, since this is a addition or it's a suffix indicating something, then we can assume that this right here is the root word. So you have sha, la, and a ma. So with that being said, we should know what this root word means. Sha, la, and ma means shalom, which means peace. Shalom, right? Now you add a ha at the end, and this is where we have to break our minds out of thinking that this is a feminine word, because this is actually the name of a prominent king of Israel, David's son, King David's son, Solomon, which you will pronounce in Hebrew, Shalamah. All right. So when you'll pronounce these two together. The Assyrian Hebrew, again, doesn't have the connectors, but, I'm going to put it there and just for understanding purposes. But the Assyrian doesn't have those connectors. So you'll pronounce that together, Shalamah, meaning Solomon. All right. How you doing? So this is the name of King Salaki. This is the name of King Solomon. King Solomon's name, Shalamah in the Hebrew. All right. Now we know that based on King Solomon's practices, him being a leader of Israel at the time, this was no feminine man. So it's understood that this is not a feminine name. It's the name of a mighty and a wise king. So, and, who had, multiple wives and, things like he was a very masculine man, a very wise and masculine king and ruler, right? So why is this here? Well, this, just for understanding, his name means peaceful, right? And this ha right here indicates that he is like in his service as a king. He was in his service. He brought peace, right? So that's a good way to understand it. So like he settled disputes, he settled wars, he brought nations together. He kept his, he kept the esteem of his father, by making his father and his forefathers by making wise decisions, and as a king. So he was a servant of peace, right, to his people. He brought peace to his kingdom. So that's where his name comes from. It comes from the root word shalom, meaning peace. And then you add a ha at the end, meaning that in his service as a king, he brought peace. Just to make that easy to understand. Now we're gonna talk about the word shalom, right? Because this seems to be a very controversial word amongst these fake Israelite groups and these solo Israelites, you know what I'm saying, who don't, you know what I'm saying, who aren't under the ISUPK, under Commander General Yana. And, you know, it's obviously it's not controversial to us because we understand the truth and we understand where these confusions entered or how these confusions entered our nation. So we don't fall into the same pitfalls, which is why it's important to, you know what I'm saying, be one body as Christ said, and be under, you know what I'm saying, under one authority. You know what I'm saying, not having several camps. You know what I'm saying? The Most High has always been the same. You know what I'm saying? There wasn't multiple camps. When Christ was performing his miracles, raising the dead, healing the sick, making the lame walk, and all of that, it wasn't multiple camps and multiple. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't none of that going on. You know what I'm saying? Everybody was under the authority of Christ, and Christ was under the authority of the Most High. Right? So all of this, you know what I'm saying, how we think that now all of a sudden there's more than one, you know what I'm saying, we can have more than one leader, more than one camp is, you know what I'm saying, is ridiculous. And it's a flat out lie, right? So we can go ahead and bust this down and understand, first of all, this is how you say the word, right? Shalom. Shah, this is how you spell it in the Hebrew. Shah, La, and Ma. Shalom, meaning peace, right? Now you'll see these other Israelite groups, these fake Israelite groups, who are under the authority of Commander General Yohana, under Christ, under the Most High, right? They'll say Shah, La, and then they'll add a Wa in the middle, making it Shalawam. Now here's the problem with that, right? And just try to follow me because it's very simple, right? It's not hard to understand. Now, if you look into your biblical Hebrew textbook, right, it'll tell you on the first page, you know what I'm saying, right after you get past the preface and the introduction and the contents, right, on page 1, let me see if we can get to it real quick. It'll, in regards to the Wa, first of all, in regards to the Wa, it'll say, let me see if I can put that on the camera. In the brackets, right, it says, in regards to the Wa, now in modern Hebrew, or what's called Yiddish, which is spoken by the fake Jewish man, right, in the synagogue which is basically your oppressor putting on your culture, right? They will say it's now pronounced with a V sound, which they will say Va. But it was originally pronounced as a Wa. So in this book, written by, you know what I'm saying, written by the oppressor, written by Yale scholars, right? They're telling you now they use it as a Va, or they pronounce it as Va with a V. But it was originally pronounced as Wa, as a W or Wa, right? So as one thing. So that's how they get this confusion. But here's another thing. On page 2, it talks about, okay, well, I'm gonna go to page 3 first. It says at the top of page 3, I'll read it for you. It says the Hebrew alphabet is the oldest in the world, still in use today, right? So this Hebrew alphabet that we teach every Friday is the oldest in the world, right? our own alphabet is a descendant of it by circuitous root, right? So the alphabet that they use today in the Jewish synagogues and all of that, in the in the text that they read from, it's in the descendant of the original Hebrew. And then it also says the text of the Hebrew. Oh, Salakia. Okay, the text of the Hebrew Bible we use today, talking about your oppressor, the Jewish man, who impersonates your culture, as we know in Revelations 2:9, Revelations 3:9. They say they are the Jews, but are not, right? The Jews are a dark-skinned people. Christ was a Jew. It says on his cross that he died on, he was the king of Jews, right? And he was a very dark-skinned man, as it's described in the Bible. So that's why it says in Revelations 2:9, Revelations 3:9, that they say they are the Jews, but they are not. So how do we got our oppressor in the, reading our language and bastardizing our language and, changing things up, mispronouncing things and repronouncing things, right? So the text that they use today, which they slandered and and turned upside down, it says it reflects several periods of development. Originally, only the consonants were used. I'll read that again, because this is important for us to understand. Originally, only the consonants were used. Now, why am I honing in on this? Because, okay, so next it says, by the time of the Israelite kingdom, some consonants it says some consonants were used to indicate certain vowels, right? Now, what they're talking about is the time where we lost our position, We lost our kingdom, we lost our language and our culture, and they picked it up. That's why it says, again, Revelations 2:9, they say they are Jews, but they are not, because they picked up our culture and flipped it around to fit their Slacky, you said the ancient sister. What do you mean by that? Can you elaborate on that question, please? So I can address that. But so it's saying after they came and put on our culture, right? They came and started to flip things around, and now they started to insert vowels because we are the oldest before the consonants, the ancient and the Assyrian. So the Hebrew that we teach, like I'm writing in the Assyrian right now. This has no vowels. This has no vowels at all. Abba, even the like when we write like Shah with a English A at the end, this is just the phonetic, the transliteration of how you would pronounce it. Like if you ever looked up in a dictionary, you'll look up a word, and underneath the word of parentheses, it'll have a pronunciation of how you would pronounce it. Or if you get on Google Translate or something like that, and look up a foreign word, it'll give you the foreign word written in English, and then it'll have the pronunciation up under it. So when you see Shah spelled SHA, that word by that Shah, that character is a consonant. All 22 characters of the Hebrew alphabet are consonants. Even the ah and the I, which we would look at as a vowel, as vowel sounds, those are all consonants. That's why I'm bringing this out, because I'm gonna show you what they did and how they inserted vowels. And they this is how your oppressor in their pride, like they pride gets them every time, because they telling on themselves right now. Like this isn't just Qadash saying this. This ain't the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge just making up things off the top of our head. We're reading this out of a book that our oppressor had a hand in writing, right? So they're saying that the oldest, and we know that the Hebrew is the oldest language, as it's saying on page 3. The text of the Hebrew is the Hebrew alphabet is the oldest in the world, right? And it only had consonants. But so how do we get vowels? Well, on page 2, they have these things called vowel points. And I'm gonna get right back to this. I'm gonna get right back to actually I'm gonna bring it all the way full circle. All right. Right. They inserted a thing called vowel points. Did that answer your question, sister? Let me know if you need more, and I'll just to make sure I understood your question correctly. But what they did, so there were no vowels, right? As it said in the on page 3 in this biblical Hebrew textbook, right? So there are no vowels. But what they did was add vowel points, right? So you'll see things like you'll see like I don't know if you could see this. Let me see if I could bring it a little closer. They would add something like you'll see like a dot. Like if you look into your Hebrew textbook, or if you look into, let me think, the Bible Hub, the Greek interlinear, the Hebrew Greek interlinear, you'll see these dots, right? You'll see maybe a dot up here, a dot right here, right? You might see a line underneath a word or a character. I mean, Salaki. Or it might have like a line with another like little T looking thing at the bottom. You might see something like this right here. These are all vowel points that was Most High in Christ. These are all vowel points that was added by the oppressor, right? Because they, you know what I'm saying, just to fit their European tongue, right? So after they stole our language and used it for their own to try to impersonate our culture, they added vowel points. So your oppressor, when you see like when you see Shalam in their text, it'll be written like with one of these vowel points, maybe a dot up here, a dot right here, or something like that. And all these indicate the O sound, right? A vowel, which again isn't in the original text. As they said in this text, it's not in the original Hebrew, no vowels. But what they did was add these vowel points to make this Y sound like a O. So it says it has a sha, la, a wa, and a ma, but they pronounce this as a O. So even in their text, it's pronounced shalom with a long O, right? The original is shalam, sha, la, and ma. In their text is shalom, right? So where do we get shalawam from then? Well, it's from not being under the proper leadership and not being taught properly. You know what I'm saying? Not wanting to be under the authority of who the Most High put in authority. And that's how, you know what I'm saying? That's how kingdom fall, kingdom split, you know what I'm saying? Historically throughout the scriptures, not wanting to be under authority. So now we got brothers and sisters, you know what I'm saying, who lost out there under the wrong authority, or we got brothers and sisters leaving the home of the truth and starting their own thing, and now they go off and say shalom. So we got brothers with hula hoop skirts, little fringes around their t-shirts, when the scripture said on a border of blue, right? Where two parts meet on a border of blue. There's no border at the bottom of no damn t-shirt. So you got brothers and sisters with hula hoop skirts with the border of blue on the bottom of they t-shirts with tassels on the bottom of their joints, saying shalom, shalom. Shalom doesn't exist. There is no shalom, right? Shalom comes from the mispronunciation of a bastardized version of shalom, where a vowel is inserted with vowel points on the wa to make it a O. So your oppressor says shalom. The Lord said shalom. But rebellious blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans want to do their own thing. They say shalom because they don't understand. They don't understand what we understand in the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge. That's why it's important to learn from the people, the brothers who actually put in the work, you know what I'm saying, to do the research, do the archaeological research, do the studying, and learn at the feet of their authority and held on to this truth. That's why it's important for us to be one body. So we wouldn't have some people over here saying shalom, some over here saying shalom like their oppressor, and you know what I'm saying, us saying shalom like the Lord intended. You wouldn't have that if we just would come together and be one body under, and the only way we could be one body is under the original body, the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge, started out at 1 West 125th Street since 1969 under Commanding General Yohana. That's the only way. So shalom does not exist. It's a goofy mispronunciation. It's a goofy mispronunciation from unlearned people who from brothers and sisters who don't understand. So I recommend every brother and sister, you know what I'm saying, who's under the sound of my voice right now, who under the sound of Commander General Yohana's voice, to get back and just come home. Come home, man. Put down all that. Get the tassels off the bottom of your shirt and come home. Understand your culture properly. Cut all the shalom nonsense out. Again, shalom does not exist. So, and I will write this down in your notes too. You know what I'm saying? So we can understand where these mispronunciations come from. So, you know, we never have to make that same mistake again, saying shalom to one another. Man, shalom doesn't mean nothing. It doesn't mean nothing at all. It's not a word at all. We just broke that down for you today. But, you know, we're going to end it right there. Appreciate the brothers and sisters who endured, you know what I'm saying, during class, asking questions, participating in the chat, all of that. We're going to pick it up again next week. Salakia, let me think. I'm gonna just leave it for next week, right? We're gonna talk about what we're gonna get into next week. When we get to it, then we're gonna cross that bridge when we get to it. But with that, give a courtesy salute to the brothers. Shalom Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahweh Shabbat. To the brothers, Shalom Yahweh Shmarlatah Ba'ashim Yahweh Shad, all the sisters.